Ready, Cam? Okay. Welcome everybody to the Town Council meeting. We are going to call this meeting to order at 5:37 and ask for roll call. You know what I mean. That thing. Rob Levitt.
Here.
Herschel Ross.
Here.
Harry Tenenbaum.
Here.
Amy Brown.
Here.
Jackie Woodsit. Here. Mark Little.
Here.
Rick Stevens.
Here.
Everyone accounted for. Thanks, Pam. Before we kick this off fully, we just want to thank Grassroots TV for being here and for broadcasting our meeting live. People can also view tonight's meeting and previous council meetings at www.grassrootstv.org. Our videographer this evening is Andrew Hart. Thank you, Andrew. And tomorrow morning, as always follows a regular meeting, is the Mayor's Coffee at Saxy's at 8 o'clock. So if anybody wants to come over, come say hi. Okay, our first item of business is a couple pieces of a work session. Our town planning work session, Basalt River Park with Post and P&Z. Susan.
I'm Susan Felt, the planning director, and we have 3 items that are concerning the town planning process tonight. And my role tonight is to kind of frame that discussion and then maybe fill in the gaps. So what we're going to do tonight is we're going to kick off with a work session with Post, where they're presenting the work that they've done on the River Park to the P&Z and the Town Council. And we're anticipating that this is about a half an hour discussion with the Town Council, asking questions at the end of the presentation and giving Post feedback. And then we have the P&Z, the second half an hour, presenting their concepts on the zoning that they're selecting for our town planning process. And then we have an action, we follow that with an action item, and this is the resolution that's being considered by the town council tonight. Mike Scanlon will be handling that, and that resolution is kind of responding to the citizen petition that the council reviewed at the last meeting. And I think Mike kind of introduced the idea at the last meeting that he would be presenting this resolution for the council's consideration. So we're going to kick it off with Post. We have 3 members of Post that are here. Paul Hilt, Denise Latusig, and Cindy Bruce are in the front row there. And our 2 presenters, which are Julie Kolar and Suzanne Jackson, aren't here. So Jen and I are going to step in. Jen had an emergency with her dog, and Julie had an emergency with her dog, and Suzanne is on her way back from a hut trip, so she may be joining us kind of mid-presentation. But both the Post presentation and the P&Z presentation really are framed by some of the same guiding documents that the town council has approved. Judy told me today that the last trailer was actually moved in April of 2014. 2014 was kind of the year of everybody gets to make a plan. The school children, the center at the Clayson building where everyone got to plan. And 2015 was really where the town council started to frame that discussion. If you remember, we had the Downtown Area Advisory Committee, and they did their work at the end of 2014 and presented that to the town council early 2015. And the town council at that time adopted this Resolution 3. And what Resolution 3 did is it kind of divided up the work. The different parties, staff got some, but most importantly, Parks, Open Space, and Trails got the responsibility for, 1, finishing the River Park planning, and 2, the Two Rivers Road Master Plan, which we talked about a meeting or so ago. And then the P&Z, they were charged with, 1, doing the master plan update to reflect the doc report, and 2, to prepare the zoning for the our town planning properties. And the town council and the P&Z both adopted that our town master plan. The map here is the doc plan. That was what the doc came out of the doc work, but that plan was actually evolved more into this plan here, which is what is reflected in our town master plan amendment. And really that fundamentally came from another resolution, this resolution 19, which did two things. One, it's really respecting that big V, which is a fundamental piece of our town planning project, and two, where the proposed building line was on the CDC property. So those were two kind of guiding lines that both the Post and the P&Z were operating under, and the work that you're going to see today. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to Jen. And it you know, kind of the other piece of this, if you remember, at the end of July, we took the work that the P&Z and Post had done, and we made a presentation to the town council. And Jen's going to go over a little bit of that because I think it helps kind of guide how they got here today. So, Jen.
Sure. Thanks, Susan. Thanks, everyone. So I think the first thing that we just really want to reiterate is that this has been a several-month process. I think we started back in June of last year, 2015, this whole planning process with Post. And have gone through sort of several steps and several design iterations to kind of get where we are today. So James, you want to show the first? So I think you may remember having seen these studies back in July. And so these were looking more specifically at programming within the polygon areas, and these were presented both to P&Z, to Post, and to yourselves back in July. And then along with that, some ideas of conceptual imagery for programming that may happen within the park area. And so this spoke to sort of terraces and landforms. I can go ahead and switch. And then another concept that kept coming up was the idea of a beer garden or outdoor dining and community space. And then also providing sort of more natural style play features and opportunities for interaction with the water. That led to sort of us taking a step back after that process and starting to think about the site on a whole a little bit more, going back to the work that was done as a part of the DAC concept map, and then thinking about how do we connect this both to the Big V and create that flow coming from downtown into the site. And so we did a series of energy flow diagrams that were also presented back in July, talking about site circulation and different important nodes. And then this was the agreed upon activity flow diagram that sort of led directly into our planning efforts in the park. And so I might turn it over to you Post members here to talk about the next steps. So back in September, we met on site as a group, and this diagram that you see in front of you was handed out to each Post member along with a list of site programming elements. And each were given the task of sort of creating their own vision for how elements might lay out on the park site, and then ranking what elements were important to each of them. And then the next two examples are results that we got back from various Post members. And so this was one that we got from Suzanne, and then another one that we got from Julie. And so what we ended up doing with these was we came back to Post and we met and sort of came to a consensus. What are the important site elements that everyone on Post can agree upon wanting to see in the park space? And then where do we all feel as a group that these elements should be located? And do you guys want to sort of speak to anything in this process before we go to the plans, or?
Oh, you're going.
Okay.
Going well.
Okay. And again, what was really important to us along the way, that this wasn't just a design that was coming out of nowhere, that this wasn't driven by any one person, that this was really driven by every member of Post coming together and agreeing upon sort of how we were moving forward and what we were including in this design. And then taking that consensus, we moved forward to the next step and created two different conceptual design options. The first site plan option looked at creating a subsurface parking underneath the polygon area, and the second looked at what it would be like if we didn't have that area. Again, we had conversations surrounding these park plans after they were presented in a post meeting, and then also came back with a lot of feedback from members on how we might make a few adjustments here and there to get to another plan. So one of the things that we felt like was really important coming out of that meeting was thinking about the park as a part of a larger network. Thinking about, extending, we have this amazing resource of town-owned open space on the north side of the river, extending all the way from the pedestrian bridge to the Midland Avenue Bridge. And thinking about how we might start creating connections between all these spaces and how the Pan and Fork really becomes that missing part of the equation. And then going into the actual site plan itself, I'm going to start to sort of talk you through the different areas and elements. I'm going to get the... So the first area I want to talk about is Lions Park. Again, going back to the DAC map, this became a really important connection to downtown and to the riverfront. Coming up with a concept that had sort of a certain flow to it that went back to our energy flow diagrams and created a pathway or a series of pathways that would end up taking you from a point downtown across the road and into the park space. It was also really important that what was happening over on this side also be reflected on this side, so it didn't feel like two separate parks, but really a part of a larger park. Within that, also thinking about Two Rivers Road and how it was really important to post that didn't feel like a road that was separating two parks, that was really a road that just happened to be located in the middle of a park. So ways in which we sort of looked at doing that was relocating the bus stops a little bit further to the west, narrowing the road by eliminating some of the parking in these areas, and we've also talked about having sort of a different type of paving surface within this area, and then creating connections that are a little bit more organic and flowing rather than your typical crosswalk connections. And then the next area that takes us into is this, what we're calling the event lawn area. So this is really the large, flexible, open space area within the Big V that really preserves some of the big views that are happening from this corner looking out, and creates a large, flexible, open space area. It looks at tucking the bandstand up against the bridge down here, and creating a series of terraces that work with a slope that can also double as seating area in the lawn area. Also framing that with some planting around the edges, being really strategic about how we place those. We may not decide to put everything in all at once. We may want to live with it a little bit first before we start, adding things, just really being sensitive to views and to how the space is going to be used in the future. So the next area I want to talk about a little bit more is what we're calling the polygon area. And sort of to frame this conversation, we know there's an awful lot of talk going on right now about the development line. And I think we're choosing at this point to show sort of the maximum build out and the development line as it was presented in Resolution 19, understanding that this is still in flux, and really the plans around this area are completely flexible and can change depending on how this all gets resolved. So in this area, we have been envisioning sort of a more open plaza space that would be a connection across, direct connection across from Midland Spur. We would have a water feature that would end up leading you down into the park space, creating sort of a flow and a connection to the water starting at Two Rivers Road. Also creating we've been talking about sort of a beer garden or restaurant sort of in this area here, incorporating restrooms and other sort of park facilities that are needed in here too, in a way that they're not within the Big V, and sort of create that nice transition between what may be development and what could be more general open space. We sort of thought about this area as being you know, a larger canopy with smaller building areas within that, so that you have this nice mix of open space and, you know, building space within that, and some flexible seating options. And then moving down, the water feature would end up flowing and coming down this series of civic-style steps and into this, what we're calling the children's play area. We felt like it's really important to have a connection to water, but in a way that can be safe and approachable. You know, we have this amazing river resource, yet it's not always going to be safe for all users to engage with. So having other opportunities for different user groups to have that experience with the water becomes a really important thing. And also sort of sticking with natural materials in a play area rather than, you know, having more.
Picture of that,
Sure.
yeah, as an example.
So if you look up here on the wall, this is a children's play area. And I have that slide coming up too that we'll come to. And again, another conceptual rendering showing what it would feel like to be within that. The larger open space area is up there on the wall. And we'll walk you through that once we get sort of through it, the general overview here. So again, opportunities for seating along the edges of the children's play area on these civic steps. And you can see that up in this slide here. And sort of more natural stone-style crossings. We felt like it's really important for the materials in here also to be natural because this is within the floodplain. And so working with cobble and working with sand, those are easy to sort of replace and move around as needed if this area does become inundated in the future. So we're not doing any real permanent improvements that will be a problem moving forward. So the next area I want to talk about a little bit more is the actual riverfront itself. We really see these jetty areas as becoming destination spaces where people can get out on the jetties and start to interact with the water a little bit more, creating some pockets of planting, but not, not in a way that will end up blocking view. So focusing more on like larger cottonwoods that'll have a higher canopy and maybe lower growing plant material so that you're creating shade while still keeping these views open. And then also creating a series of additional connections through the wetland areas, which right now are pretty underutilized just due to limited access to these zones. So thinking about other ways to engage people with different parts of the site. And then also creating connections back over to Old Pond Park and thinking about this in terms of a larger network. We've also seen this area in here as being more of a passive area where you might have more intimate seating areas, and again, I think in the future, thinking about how these areas in here will relate to whatever ends up happening on the CDC parcel itself. So you can go ahead and move forward. So again, this is a rendering that's also up on the wall right now that talks a little bit more about what it might feel like to be in that open lawn space. And so this would be looking sort of from the intersection of Two Rivers Road and Midland Avenue, up the big view, up the river, looking at that open space.
And you're making up maybe you could just explain the grade and how the grade is kind of terracing
Sure.
back as a reminder of how that
Yeah.
picture is working.
So there's about a 6-foot grade difference between Two Rivers Road and the river. And so we're looking at sort of terracing that down in a way that terracing that down in a way. And it's a nice background to
our event space.
There's a concert going on in this event space right now. Carlos Santana's playing, and we're all just getting into it. It's great. So we have these. We're utilizing these terraced areas by creating these flatter areas in between, and potential areas for seating within these drops. I think there's a little bit of concern about balancing that with sort of creating level areas and not having a safety or tripping concern. So I think we're still thinking about how to move forward with that, but this is sort of a preliminary idea of how we might sort of create some built-in seating and some structure within that area. And then again, this is the conceptual rendering of the children's play area, showing sort of opportunities for free-form play with cobble and sand, seating opportunities along the bank. And I think what we wanted to note here, we didn't want to move forward pretending that there was nothing in the background here. We'd rather show sort of the worst, the largest level of build out. I don't want to say worst case scenario, but the largest level of build out currently being discussed for the site. So that's what you're seeing ghosted in the background here. And again, this is sort of the vision for these jetty destination areas. You know, maybe there's some more natural seating with logs. Maybe there's a little bit of paving to create some spaces, but done in a very natural way, and it becomes these accessible areas both for fishing or for interacting with the river itself. And then this is a cross section looking through the Great Lawn area, the event lawn, of the trail that's going to run alongside of the river, and then what you currently see out there right now, which is the boulder bank stabilization, and how that can also serve as sort of seating area as a way to get down to the water, and then also sort of fishing access that ends up happening within the river areas. And so the last piece that we wanted to talk about design-wise is that coinciding with this effort that's happening with the park, you know, there's also work that's going on now with the Roaring Fork Conservancy over in the Old Pond Park area. And as a part of that initial master plan for the Roaring Fork Conservancy, there were accessible trails and an accessible fishing pier. And we feel like the efforts that are happening with that coincide really well with what's happening in the park. And we're seeing those more and more as sort of interconnected areas. That this old pond really provides another, provides access for another user group that may not be fully accommodated for within the river itself. That, you know, there will be anglers out on the jetties, but again, that may not feel like the safest, most approachable area. That we also have an opportunity for people with mobility issues or children to be approaching fishing and interacting with the water recreationally in this setting instead. And again, this is just another version that we looked at a way that this could be accommodated. Maybe it's not maybe it's not a wooden pier. Maybe it ends up being a stone and crusher fine pier as well. And then I'm going to turn it back over to Susan.
You know, the next couple of slides I just want to show you that we have here, for those of you who are actually want to zero down into acres. This one is the exhibit that was attached to one of the last resolutions where you were providing direction to the P&Z in terms of what the different areas are and what they amount to. Jen, if you could show, James, if you could pull the next one. This is a map that's, you know, maybe helpful for folks to kind of understand the relationship of the active park area and the passive park area. I don't think we can emphasize enough that this is one overall park that we're kind of knitting together with different trails coming off of Two Rivers Road. Kind of that light green area. Jen, can I have the pointer back? But this light green area here is the passive park area. That's the area that contains the wetlands that we were required to mitigate for under the core permit. And it's kind of important to kind of know that not all of this can be an active park, because in the way that we did our core permits, they were layered with different nationwide permits. So this area here, this is kind of the line of our active park area. So this area here is kind of the active park area that, I'll go over here. It's back. This is the area that we own. So the town of Basalt owns this area today. This is the just a little bit over 2 acre piece of that larger dry area here that we own. This area here is the park area that matches up outside of the polygon This is currently owned by the Roaring Fork CDC. This red line, of course, is denoting the boundary of the CDC property. And this is showing, like, here's the little polygon area, here is the building area, and here is the open space area between RMI and the building area, again, where you could access the park. And I think, do we have one more slide here? And Jen, maybe you can this is just briefly how we were seeing the park elements being phased, and I'm going to turn it over to Jen.
Yeah, sure. So, we put a lot of thought into thinking about what we could possibly move forward with now or in the near future without, having full resolution about what ends up happening with the development parcel. We have town-owned land right now. What's not included here is Old Pond Park, which again, now we're sort of looking at that as a part of the bigger piece, and there are some implementable things that we could move forward with, as early as this year, depending on how things happen. In addition, there have been improvements that have already happened over in this area, and that's sort of what's happened in phase 1. Phase 2 could potentially be the area sort of around the children's play zone, and then that could also lead into 3, which could be starting to develop that open space Great Lawn area. 4 would end up there would have to be some resolution as to what happens with the CDC site. And then 5 sort of happening after that. We really see what happens here being more directly tied to what ends up happening with the actual development area in this zone. And then 6, Lions Park, we've envisioned sort of a couple different futures for that. The one that we were showing in our graphic here leaves both the art base and town hall in its current configuration, but we've also sort of looked at, what might happen in the future if buildings change around. So thinking about, do we have an interim solution working with the structures that we have today, or does a larger overhaul of this area end up happening, and we sort of wait until that comes together before improvements to Lions Park happen in earnest.
So what we're really kind of going back to you now, this is the opportunity for the council to give post direction. What we have kind of programmed time-wise is to talk about it. Then we were going to bring back a resolution at the next council meeting that was kind of giving, formal direction back. But that's what we're looking for before we go further. These are conceptual plans. So we haven't done costing on these plans, and that's kind of the next step, is to take it to the next level. So we need to check in with you. The group would like to move forward. They're pretty excited about the planning that they've done to date, and so they're looking to hear from the council.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for your presentation and for all the work all of you have done on this. It's beautiful, of course. Makes me want to cry. Makes me want to be warm. And I don't know how much time we're allowing per segment, because the full 30 minutes was used on this presentation. Do you have a thought about how?
Well, I think we could go till a quarter after and then do a time check. So I think,
That sounds
this
good.
is kind of the more fun stuff. The P&Z stuff isn't
Yeah.
quite as fun.
I mean, it's
Just gonna be this.
it's equally fun, Dylan, it's equally fun. Okay, Herschel.
Love the concept, really appreciate the hard work you guys have done. This is great community involvement. I just had a couple quick questions. Has Post looked into the technical possibility of putting parking under the octagon because of the water table problems?
Well, putting the parking underneath is the same thing as putting the parking garage underneath the rest of the development, which everybody felt pretty comfortable doing. It isn't an inexpensive project for sure. The one advantage of putting parking underneath the polygon is that you know, we could look at different ways of funding that parking, and it would open up some public parking and access to the garage.
It's physically possible is my question.
Yeah, physical possible.
Good.
so.
See,
So,
short
okay,
question.
okay, sorry.
And then,
I wanted to get that in though.
thank you, appreciate it.
But not inexpensive.
But not inexpensive. I heard that part.
Okay.
The, Midland Spur, I love your idea about trying to make, a Two Rivers Road more of a, local transit kind of road. One of the drawings that came out of or several of the drawings that came out of our town planning process, not easy to say, showed, the entrance to Basalt being moved over to Midland Spur, and so the two parks would actually be contiguous rather than your concern that it'd be like it was separated by a road. Is that hanging around still? Is that being considered still, or is that thought to be undesirable or unpractical?
I think the charge that the committee was given was just to follow the direction that was set in the council prior actions, which, you know, related to making that a Booner, and, you know, more of pedestrian scale, but not eliminating the road.
But not eliminating road,
Yeah.
thanks. Easy questions.
Well, I'm just impressed because I think that when you took the focus on a larger concept, iteration, the piece that you were working on fits in just the way it was planned to be fitted into the River Master Plan 2000. And it just says everything about those studies that were done by Rumpke, by workshop, were taking into consideration. Somebody mentioned to me the other day that while we've been developing these individual pieces, and the pieces that are easiest and least expensive to build are the ones that are natural, not necessarily the contrived grading and things like that, but so you can move forward with those areas now because you've created phases that are easily done. The other thing is, somebody said to me, when you look at it from east going west, that the total river corridor, parkland, and other small pieces around this part of town is 130 acres. That's what we've acquired since 1998 or whatever it was. So to find the last piece of the puzzle here and make it look like you have is, just puts the icing on the cake as far as I'm concerned. And you know, to think about, you know, we're gonna gain, and, you know, the wall-to-wall stuff with the two easements we had to purchase, that wasn't very appealing to me. But this is taking that land we would have had to buy back, putting it in one location makes a lot more sense, and it's kind of like the center of the bullseye right there, where you have two branches reaching out, right? It's, I don't think you could have done a better job, personally.
Jen's company thought that the play park and the way the water was gonna be would become almost a signature, you know, just a wow factor for Basalt.
Old Pond Park won an award from the state of Colorado as the best small park project in the state when it was constructed. And there was a lot of hurdles and things to jump over, but, you know, you're tying into an award-winning project, so keep that in mind as you go. Yeah, that thing's incredible, and the focus on the plan too is to try to get that riparian, so and the same thing happened at the club up the road, was bio-islands, that concept of the right vegetation in the right place to get the right bugs to the fish and all that stuff. So anyway, it's nice. Thank you.
I think the smart use of space with river restoration and protection, and I think it's going to become not just a local resource, but a destination.
Well, it ties into the conservancy and RMI and the environmental side.
When you look at the
science.
whole,
Okay, Gary.
Well, yeah, I mean, I really appreciate, I got to see this twice now, and this was really, it's really nice to give the work back and to a subcommittee, and then you come up with plans that, you know, that really are, you know, it activates this park. The one thing I was always kind of worried about with Old Pond was it's not active. There's not enough people using it. It's not an easy thing to get to. This activates that. And I like the natural piece. You know, one of the cool things, Heron Park in Aspen has a playground like this, and it is hugely used by the community. The thing is, in Aspen, it's not very close to downtown. It's hidden off to the side. It's not easy to get to. This will be right in town. I mean, this is just, it's perfect. I love how, you know, I really love this beer garden thought or outdoor space thought. I think that's a lot better than building thought, especially on that polygon piece, because I think it's very usable, and it's something where you can use it for commercial use, but also it's a public use. So I really appreciate that. The road piece, I'm happy Herschel brought that up, because, you know, the whole goal of what we should be doing on Two Rivers Road and Two Rivers Greenway is, you know, we really got to start looking at, you know, the car is not the ultimate goal of what we should be designing for. And, you know, we really should be looking at ways to reduce the car in downtown Basalt. And it would be awesome. I like that you necked it down right now. And, you know, we're taking the parking away from that area because it just congests it. And you want people to be able to flow through it. And yeah, the bus is great that it still can go through there. And, you know, for now, but I really want to look bigger into a future where the car is not the major driver of this area here. That really people, bikes and walking, and it just should be our future and our focus on it. And so
Our infrastructure and connectivity is so important because we want the locals to walk to the park rather than taking up a parking spot where people will be coming from Glenwood from the past to that will be in their vehicles that will need parking.
And then one last piece was just to connect it. It's like, you know, if we do parking garages here, or, you know, there's other places to put parking garages, and there's easier places to put parking garages, and you would then remove the car from this whole area, this active park and everything else. So I would love to look at that piece of it, and I know we're talking about it in zoning and everything else. So, you know, as we're looking at the park, and, you know, if we look from the road, from Midland all the way down, the amount of open space and the amount of river that we have protected as a community is impressive, and it should be celebrated because there are very few communities in the country that can do what Basalt did, and with its partners, it can do this. And so I really appreciate it. It kind of gives me the goosebumps to see this come to fruition. So I really appreciate that.
The goosebumps.
I got them. You want to see them?
I know, I believe you. Rob?
Hey Jackie, great presentation, Jen.
Thank you.
Really well done. Just a couple of brief points to keep in mind as this gets fine-tuned. You know, we talked about 6-foot drop on the open space council area. Just keep in mind ADA accessibility. There are ramps and areas we need to do. There's the elevation change from Lions Park to the CDC parcel, and it makes them not connected. And so in 2 dimensions there, they look connected, but in reality, whatever's going on in Lions Park has nothing to do with what's going on there because you can't see across the street. So I don't know if we're going to put a parking garage here and raise the elevation or what we're going to do, but I just think it needs to be in the conversation.
I can respond a little bit to that. We've been, you know, working with Loris and Associates as a part of the Two Rivers Road Master Plan. We've talked about this issue, you know, it's pretty obvious when you're out there that there is that disconnect. I think what we've talked about most recently as being maybe the easiest way to address that is when Lions Park does become redeveloped, that we actually start to raise the grade in this area a little bit more to help create that connection, because that's going to be easier than trying to drop the road in between. So I think there is the opportunity down the road to help address that issue.
Or put your parking garage here. Gary. And finally, I think that shade structures, shades, big trees need to be stressed because, you know, prime time, June, July, August, you need some kind of shade out there, whether we're waiting for trees to grow or we do something in the meantime. And concerts, the angle of the sun, you know, it's all important. That's it. It looks great.
My last thing that I want to throw in there is that there are elevation changes, and I think that's a good thing. And I think one thing we might want to keep in mind is that if we're going to try to have any kind of sporting events, concerts, things like that, where you could fall down kind of thing, then maybe we try to at least initially keep things to the exterior, the edges, till we see, I think you said, till we see how this feels and how we're going to use it. Because if we block it in with trees and lots of elevation changes, we are very much limiting ourselves to what we can use this park for. We are going to be out in unincorporated Eagle County for all of our sporting events and concerts. So, anyway.
I'm not sure this was ever so much sporting events, though.
Well, I'm not talking soccer, but there are, you know, like, kind of like low-key frisbee and things like that where you could still break your leg. For sure, so.
Yeah, I'll say something.
I know we need to move on to
I'll
the-
say something.
Oh, I'm sorry, Bernie, I didn't see your hand.
Yeah. Well, I want to congratulate the Post Committee, and this just shows, I think, Mike's theory in action of empowering citizens who have the energy and commitment to work with such a wonderful vision of the town's future and make it real with plants, trees, flowers. I think you've created a signature of a green welcome, a front door and a front lawn for River City in the key heart of the town, Midland Avenue on the river. And I don't know of any other place or location or park or open space that captures this as well, or is such a signature piece of our outside welcoming people to our town. So I just want to congratulate you on your good work. Thank you.
Other congratulations, or shall we move on?
I better throw my congratulations.
You better, Mark, you'll be sticking out like a sore thumb. No campaign?
No, I
speech?
like it.
Okay.
Once you opened it up and showed us the whole corridor, it just made a world of difference for me.
Really does.
Is that enough direction?
You kind of set the stage for great things, so I'm not sure that I have any criticisms at all, honestly, but
The only question is where that stage is, close to the road. Is that gonna,
Way
Yeah.
below it, though.
it's, how much, and is it gonna be affected if we put the stage on that? It's just a question. I mean, I have no idea, but all of a sudden I was like, wait a minute, the road's right there. And so is that gonna affect any concerts or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, there is a certain amount of grade change in there too, and sort of a natural berm, up against the bridge. And then, you know, we've also looked at, can we sort of plant behind that a little bit more heavily? We're just sort of screening the bridge abutment and screening sort of a, not the best view in that area too, to help with some of the sound. And I think we've also talked about sort of doing some studies out there ahead of time to make sure that that's gonna work.
Right, we were planning on kind of having a couple events and kind of testing the sound, but because of the irrigation and everything, we weren't able to pull it out last year. But we talked to Mark Breslin, who helps with our concerts, and he felt that it would be okay to have it in that location, because it was a concern of ours. So with that, let's go. Should we
yeah,
go?
let's do.
Okay, so we're gonna
Thank you,
change.
folks.
Yay.
Thanks, guys.
So we're gonna move on and change places and have Dylan Johns from P and Z come up. And Jen, can I have the, yeah, perfect, excellent. And with Dylan today, we have Gary Wheeler in the back. We have Gino Rossetti and Tracy Bennett. Did I miss anybody from the P and Z? So I'm gonna go ahead and turn it over to Dylan to kind of walk us through the P and Z's discussion and what their conclusions are. So, Dylan?
Hi, Dylan.
And Dylan's the
Hello.
chair.
Yeah, he looks like the chair.
And I'm going to apologize in advance. This presentation is not going to be as graphically exciting as the last one. I would like to start with, again, going over how we've gotten to where we are today. We began looking at town planning several years ago, before the DAC Commission did, just kind of on our own time as part of Gino Rossetti's impetus and I think wisdom. The DAC Commission engaged in the town planning process, and the report was issued, which we read and talked about as we thought about how to move into trying to get a little more specific with implementation of that plan. Initial exercises that we had were to talk about the general parameters for development, since our end objective was to get to some sort of code which could be applied to one or more parcels for a possible redevelopment scenario. At some point in there, TCY had created some massing studies to allow us to have a better idea of what certain square footages looked like when on certain pieces of property. Council had issued some directives kind of as we were going through this process, which further designed some of the envelopes and areas that we were talking about, at least with Lions Park and the Pan and Fork property. When we started to get into looking at this, we had a lot of discussion about what it meant to be of an appropriate size and scale to a town like Basalt, looking both at Basalt's existing architecture and other towns which are similar. We took a very quick look of possible uses for each site within the our town planning area. And we discussed possible zoning designations, looking at existing zoning districts that we already had, the CSC zone, the C2, the River Park zoning area. Certainly pros and cons with each one, and early on we felt very strongly that each parcel should have an anchor use when we were looking at the planning of this. And the purpose of that anchor use was to really give people a reason to go to each one of these parcels rather than just try to hope that something moved in there that was going to actually activate the space. This is the more or less the heart of our downtown, the entrance to the downtown, and we wanted it to be as vital as we could get. Spare you a lot of further discussions going around and around on what all that stuff meant. I think the summaries from January 19th and February 2nd, which are included in the packet, give a pretty good idea of what the sort of lead up to this point has been for us with respect to height and mass, as well as some additional principles. In our call with Clarion, the use table was able to be further refined, although there are still certainly, I think, some questions and uses which may need to still be in there. This is kind of a progress report more than a final presentation. And floor area has been kicked around a lot, especially for the CDC parcel. Our feeling is that to take a number that feels good to somebody and place that on a piece of property potentially limits us in what that piece of property can be. The example was if we can get the best, coolest thing that any of us could ever think of for that piece of property, and the limit was set at 50,000 feet and we needed 55 or 57,000 to make it happen, how difficult would that be? Can we simply look at planning these different parcels, which all have their own characters within town? Some of it's related to where they sit, related to topography, like Merino Park. There is the approach to town from the west, which is primarily what you're experiencing when you approach the CDC parcel. Lions Park sits right in the center of everything, and so what is the character of that? And then the Basalt Center Circle property is a very deep and somewhat oddly shaped piece of land, which when we were doing our own studies on that, found it to be somewhat difficult to come up with a real clear way of how to sort of break up that space and program it. So where we've approached it is to say, what is this character of downtown that we're after? It's usually a height, it's a module of width. Look at it like that, understanding that there's been a lot of work done with planning this site and that there are certain intentions which have been expressed both through the DAC report and ongoing studies which have indicated connections from Main Street, or not Main Street, Two Rivers to the park, and how do people move through those spaces. And if a maximum floor area was considered, would that include the circulation that's within a building, which can be 10 to 20% of the building's mass? Does it consider parking? Those sorts of things. So there's a lot to coming up with that number, and getting to application of zoning. After going through the different possible candidates for overlying zoning to all of these properties, the consensus was that the community serving zoning could potentially have the best application broadly, because it, by the way it was written, has a multiple number of uses in it and a multiple number of sort of heights and masses that can kind of be fine-tuned based on where we're talking about. And we also felt like there was a real value to looking at what the nature of community serving means. What uses are going to be vital elements to have in the downtown? Where is the best place to put them? How do these parcels fit into the larger downtown and the greater Basalt area as well? There have been a lot of talks with over the years that I've been involved about youth centers, tourist accommodations that are modern, retail. There was a bit of a question raised as to how much retail do we want to try to locate in downtown. We obviously need enough to have some vitality there, but there is a lot of pressure from the Willits area, and if the tree farm project moves through, then that's going to be additional. There's been talk about what it would mean to have a feasibility study done for some of the uses that are being considered here. What can we support? I think that the list that's contained in the Clarion report identifies those things which are seen as potentially being very important as components to downtown. But there's another component here which is also the question of housing, and how does housing fit in a downtown? It's pretty widely accepted, I think, within urban planning that to have an active and vibrant downtown, you need to have people who are there to activate it and be a part of it. How does affordable housing versus market housing fit into that picture? Affordable housing is a great thing to have. You have year-round residents, you have a lot of times younger people who are in those units, but there's always pressure from development for free market to kind of pay the bills on those projects and subsidize the other parts of the project which don't necessarily generate enough income to stand on their own. Where does parking fit into the downtown? We already have some issues with parking as more offices come back into the downtown, as parcels get developed further, what are our needs going to be then? And right now, the CDC has really taken the spotlight for most of the discussions regarding this, but we're coming at it we need to come at it from a planning perspective, which means that our problem of today is not going to be our problem tomorrow, and what is going to be the biggest problem that we're going to face is as development and revitalization continues to happen within our downtown core. And then we get into the phasing of all this. Most of the plans look at redeveloping Town Hall in some way, shape, or form. When does that happen? What are all the financial implications of that? Each property needs to really stand on its own, or else we might just get stuck without anything happening, which to some might be viewed as a success, but we need to ask ourselves, is that really where we want to go? Specifically for the CDC parcel, there are a few uses too which need to be considered, which is restrooms. Parking is going to be something if we do have big events, what happens there. And looking at this process as something which is going to have an impact on everyone within town, whether they're young, middle-aged, or older. And I think that we would certainly like to hear from council with respect to the direction that we're headed, and if it's possible to know whether or not we are going to have limitations forced upon us. It would be good to know that sooner than later, but I think the way that we're approaching this now is to try to leave as much open as we can while being considerate to what the town needs and what the town's character already is. So I'll close my presentation, and Susan, if you have anything to add, or happy to take questions.
Sure, I just wanted to add a couple things. And one of those is schedule, and it kind of frames some of the the decisions that we're kind of making. And one of the things that I was tasked with was how fast can we get the zoning done? And can we actually, I think a couple of people actually wanted it to happen before the election, so that we know what's happening, for example, on the CDC property. So in light of that, staff asked Clarion to help us, give us some guidance. And we've used Clarion in the past. We used them back in a design, we used design workshop and Clarion back in 2004 after we did the river master plan, and we were kind of looking at this river district that Dylan had alluded to, and for various reasons we didn't move forward on that. But we did use Clarion when we were doing the community priority scoring system regulations, and then we used them when we did the amendments to the replacement housing provisions. Clarion hasn't, to my knowledge, they haven't really done any work on the private sector in the Roaring Fork Valley. They did a major code rewrite for Picken County, and they did the Carbondale code, rewrite that they had for implementing their master plan. So kind of circling back to the schedule, it shows you the schedule on the wall, and that was in the packet. It kind of shows you when the P&Z initially started their discussions with the CSC zone, using the CSC zone district, which actually was mentioned in the doc report. The P&Z looked at some of their options and ended up kind of
concluding with using the community serving zone district with incorporating some of the elements of the river district. So that's kind of the general direction, and again, the same as with the post, we're looking for check-in with the town council to see that we're going in the right direction.
I just had a couple questions for Bill, because when I was reading this Don Elliott Aquarium information, a couple things jumped out at me, and, just like, I knew parking was expensive, but when they talk about underground being 10 times more expensive than surface parking, and they talk about above-ground structure being 7 times more, and how you have to generate a ton of revenue to, even in your wildest imagination, justify that. Also, some cautions, I guess I would call them, about unintentionally encouraging tenants, et cetera. I'm just wondering what you took to heart, or what was your takeaway from all this Clarion information? Because it was all kind of big news to me.
Well, preparing this presentation was difficult in a lot of ways because there are so many issues which overlap and intermix, and I would say that what Clarion has done here is perhaps provide a little bit more detail to items that we've been discussing, but we are thinking about this. These are, as soon as something happens on CDC one way or another, we're going to be moving to these other bigger issues, which are going to be fundamentally driven into the area that we have to work with, and the areas that we have to work with within town are very limited. And they could also take a very long time to actually come to fruition. So we're absolutely thinking about these things, and all of it is are things that we've discussed in some way, shape, or form. But again, it planning. This process needs to be, I think, thinking about planning for people. We're talking about people who are living here. We're not, there's been a lot of focus on brick and mortar parameters when we need to be, I think, discussing, and I think the other commissioners would agree, we need to be talking about how do we get all these things to work best within the community and within what we have to work with.
Well, I guess you caught my ear when you said feasibility studies, because it says if the town requires activating ground floor retail or entertainment uses on any of the 4 of the planning properties, it may be unintentionally encouraging tenants to locate in the new development instead of occupy existing vacancies, or could even lead to relocations of existing businesses from downtown to the new developments, resulting in more vacancies in this area. So I think he's just saying, careful thought, and I think that you guys are doing that, but I think the feasibility study is not a all wrong idea to say, what should we really be pushing and what should we maybe not be pushing? Okay, others? Bernie?
There's a trade-off between the cost of developing the urban core, cost of urban sprawl. And, I think about developing inside the core, and I think about the proximity to transit and density and services. And I also look at this as an opportunity to be congruent with the park we're creating, in that when you look at Rocky Mountain Institute and Roaring Fork Conservancy, we're building kind of an intellectual capacity in this community that doesn't exist in a lot of places. And I think what we're going to attract is businesses that may already be here, that are relocating to these areas, that understand that the development costs would be higher. It also, when the community serving zone district first was discussed, I think it was in the context of the CDC parcel, which allowed an expedited process, which gave benefits to the project and relief from certain mitigation because it had community servicing principles, if I'm not mistaken. If we traded off housing for this, and, it was about that kind of partnership. And I think that, the model we have to look at is not the normal model of land use development and development application. It's got to be a different partnership. Absolutely, the constructability of these things, underground parking and stuff like that in the downtown core. I mean, you can go over in front of the Habitat store right now, and there's a slotted grate in the middle of the parking lot at the front door, and you look in there, 4 feet down is the water table. So the truth is that to elevate that up to the street level gives you the opportunity to do some things, but you have to, I remember when they were driving foundations across the street here, and all we heard was a hammer driving pilings into the ground for summer. So the impact of that has got to be taken into consideration too. When the hotel remodeled and repurposed up here, we avoided about 700 dump trucks on Midland Avenue. So there's definitely a different conversation about how you construct these improvements in the center of town. But what is the value of doing that with people being located here versus being located out in further and further away from our center? I mean, we looked at an affordable housing unit in Iron Bridge the other day with my son, and it's 25 minutes from everywhere. And there isn't one service except the pool and the tennis court at the clubhouse that you could utilize. And I don't think we want to go there. I think we want to go here, figure out the housing component of it, do it in an expeditious way. I personally don't think we want to be delayed trying to figure out what could happen on Clark's before we implement some strategy on the CDC parcel. We'd be here forever if that was the case. So come up with a good plan. You got a good combination of the work DHM and the Post is doing and what you guys are doing on that developable piece, and I think that's step one. And the other things will fall into play as we figure out this first one. That's my opinion.
You first or
Herschel?
Herschel? Then Bernie, then
If your
Gary.
purpose was to find out where the council thinks you're going, I think you're going in absolute right direction. I think having to look at this in a planning context, for more than just one little parcel, but what is actually going to happen and how it's going to interact, and the feasibility study, I think, is essential. Absolutely think you guys are on the right track with not getting caught up on FAR, how many square feet, how many acres, but what do you want on that parcel? What is going to make that parcel work? And certainly for a riverfront parcel, I think that approach is exactly right on. I think you guys are doing great work. Keep going. Keep us moving. Let's it's time to do this, and you're a great driving force for us.
Bernie, then Gary.
Yeah, I'm a little puzzled by this number 4. Well, you don't want to have a FAR or a maximum floor area, but I was on P and Z for many years, and virtually all of the P and Z requirements have some absolute parameters. Of course, the council and the P and Z has the right to grant variances, but you say you're going to use defined volumetric and architectural character instead. I frankly don't know what that means, and I would need a separate work session to understand how you would apply that, and I would need graphic presentations because I'm not an architect or draftsman, and I have to see things in 2 dimensions to figure out what some of this language actually would mean. As a councilman who has some legal obligation, I could not overlook a mass and size as one of the key components that we have to consider in approving planning. And as far as I know, square footage, FAR are extremely convenient and conventional measures of that. So and also to protect the town, the fairness to one development versus the other, or you want to defend a position legally we might look at an envelope of a maximum with the ability to look at other creative solutions within this maximum envelope. But at the bottom line, I would not feel comfortable giving up the envelope. Now, I'll admit, I was probably one who spoke out for rapid zoning, so seems like this process has dragged on long enough, but I see your experts make some comments that make me think, and they say, we do not think there is a reason to carry forward the smart track expedited processing system proposed for the river district because each of these 4 parcels is a key contributor to the downtown character. They'll want a review in some depth. And then on the second memo, the Clarion expert says, faster review may not be a good fit for Basalt, as the review and approved procedures for both the CSC and the C2 show a desire for significant review of individual projects. So those are things that have got me rethinking, what I was saying before and wanting to consider these in any process that we look at applying zoning. Thank you.
Gary? Right?
I look at this and I'm like, I look at what P&Z has done to date, and I see, the explanation from Clarion on how to actually make the zoning. But I really believe we should zone it like we mean it, and we should zone each of these properties like we mean it. We need to give some clarity to the community, but also to the developer. We have to give clarity to the developer, the CDC and whoever they choose to develop this for some type of FAR. I agree with you guys that we shouldn't just create a building envelope on there. I think we should let, the developer, basically create what is gonna be the park and what is not gonna be the park, and let the developer with an FAR, kind of come in and show us what they could do. I think we should give clarity on how many floors we want to see. 2 was really what I was thinking, because that kind of matches with downtown much better than the 2.5, the birthday cake, because to me 2.5 is really 3. And so, I'd be more comfortable with, giving a little more clarity to it, but leaving the site open a little bit to play with the envelope. And we always talk about parking, and it gets back to my point before, is that we should not drive everything on parking. I mean, we really need to start thinking differently than, how are we gonna park this? How are we gonna park that? How are we gonna do this? And, I really wanna see if this is gonna be a community serving use in some way, because we're doing it as a community serving use. And if it's an office, office might have different parking needs than residential. And, I really want to think differently on it and not force a parking situation that the town can't afford, or the developer can't afford, or we have to create parking on this site for something else. So I don't want to necessarily make parking fit, but I would like to give some more clarity on, what is the FAR, leave the site open for some interpretation. And, the other thing is I think, looking at all the sites, we should zone it like we mean it. And I really don't think residential should be on the CDC parcel. If you go from the Roaring Fork Conservancy to RMI to, more office retail space on the other developable piece here, that really works much better than, residential. And then, there's opportunities for residential, because the site of the Basalt Center, right here, the old Clark's Market spot, that has a lot of possibility. And I really, when we talk about affordable housing, I'm not looking necessarily at 100% deed restricted. I liked your talk about, shrinking the size of the units potentially, and make that as the way to get more affordability. Smaller units do less. So, I'd like to keep more of an open mind on the the Basalt Center Circle, the Clark's Market area. Moreno Park, let's see what we could do with that. That's kind of, I guess everyone has decided that's pretty darn constrained. But if we can do the, more housing on that one, that works really well there. And then what we do on Lions Park in the area that is potentially gonna be redeveloped is, kind of an open book, but we should keep it to within, some parameter of, looking at the site and what we want to see on that site. And I'd just like to give more clarity on the FAR piece, so.
Anybody else? Yeah, I would just throw in that I tend to agree with Bernie and Gary. I think there's enough uneasiness about where this is going and how much development that we should at least define a maximum and work within that as far as at least footprint on here. And I have to also circle back around the parking issue in that downtown Denver doesn't have any parking around it. I mean, you're lucky if you can park one car on the street where you live and have 3 people there. And that actually has attracted a tremendous amount of youth, alternative transportation modes. They have smart cars, they have recycles, every place you turn around. And I think that it is not a takeaway to say we're not going to have parking for every single thing that goes on in downtown Basalt. Also, when we had presenters here, but we also see this in Aspen, Pitkin County all the time. When there are big events, you don't go park your car at the event. That isn't how it works. Same would go for Coors Field or any events. You don't necessarily expect to be able to park your car there. So I think that as expensive as parking is, I think we should be super careful, and I think we should, I've always thought we should have super high density housing in the Clark's area and probably have some parking for people who live downtown and try to figure out a way to whittle away at that parking number that we are probably looking at with underground parking and structured parking. So, anybody else? Yes.
Just briefly, I thought the takeaways of the part of the packet was really helpful. I agree with Gary that we need to provide some clarity going forward. I think we're largely on the same page, so it shouldn't be that hard. And I was really happy to see that you guys included a nonprofit type campus as one of your suggested uses, because that's been floating around since I've been on the board, and I think it'd be really good for the town.
Are we ready to call it a day on this one, or are there any last comments or questions, or anything that you want to say, Dylan?
Just one other quickie. When we put together the River Master Plan and the area around the Midland Bridge and Library and Post Office, we did a community visioning process that took the underlying zoning in downtown and looked at it, and we had the opportunity to do 500,000 square feet. And that was quite an eye-opener. The old Pond Park, our Roaring Fork Conservancy site that was created with Levinson's purchase, could have supported a 60,000 square foot office building. So we sat here and said, that's not gonna happen, so we downsized that to 30,000 square feet, because that was the one that was gonna get developed first. The Conservancy was here before RMI came along. And now we have a 4,700 square foot, 5,000 square foot, single story, story and a half footprint. And so progressively over time here, we've kind of, the evolution of this downzoning has been kind of interesting, in it going from 500,000 to a library and a post office site that could have accommodated, 100,000. And I think that the way we've done it has been kind of organic, good consultants, good planning, visionaries involved. And so I think the FAR is a good message to send, but I also think that where we're going with this is to, not to 500,000 square foot of development, but probably, I don't know what the number is, but it would be interesting to go back, and as you evolve this zone district, and you look at the pieces, to come up with a number that the town can absorb. Parking was always, the fear of not having enough parking has basically defeated a lot of opportunities that have come our way. whether it was in the downtown core or anywhere else for that matter, it always boiled down to that threshold issue of can we get enough cars in here? And I think Jackie's right about the alternative modes and the projects even in Aspen that are being auto disincentive based on that. So, but I think, you know, we're making great progress. It's just taken a while to get there. But, you know, I think that parcel could support a reasonable amount of square footage, a reasonable FAR. What's illustrated up there with the open space around the buildings is pretty good. You know, we get down to specific uses that'll tell a developer what they can afford to build and be only up for. Mentioned pay the bills, that's where it's gonna end up, right? Paying the bills.
I would like to make one quick clarification on what we had in mind for this number 4 in the floor area. Bernie, I think on the one hand, you'd said you didn't understand it, and then it sounded like with the second half, you were talking about what we were trying to describe, which would be that we have a building area which has already been somewhat identified by all of the other planning processes that have happened. And by talking about what it means to sort of be in scale with town character would really speak to how many floors do we have and those sorts of parameters, and acknowledging that within that building area, whatever is available for development, that we don't necessarily want to have it be wall-to-wall floor area that's in there, but because one of the challenges is that when we get into trying to establish, usually the common methodology for establishing a floor area is to say, here's the size of your lot, here's a number to multiply that by, and that spits out an FAR. We have parcels that are ranging of any number of size, which means that we're either specifically targeting a percentage based on what the lot area is and trying to think that we understand exactly how that floor area fits within what our dimensional parameters are on the site. And so that's why I think our direction was aimed more at trying to understand what is an appropriate town scale character, and sort of let someone come and say, here's how we can meet those more specific criteria than what the DAC report outlined, but here's what we propose to do. So that's kind of where that's headed, and I didn't mean for parking to necessarily be such a driving force with this, but it is certainly something that we do need to consider, and I think connection from, we've talked in the past with planning about the entrance to Aspen, or sorry, not entrance to Aspen, entrance to Basalt. What's that experience like? At what point does the town pick that up? How do we connect West Basalt, East Basalt, South Side to downtown, historic downtown? So there's a lot of stuff going on, and we have a limited amount of space, but we do need to be somewhat conscious of some of these factors. So I don't want to make it like parking's going to be the end-all driver for this. Thank you.
So are you okay with how Dylan described, can you just go, as Dylan explained where they're going in terms of the approach to the parcels, and are you guys okay with that, as he summarized that?
I have one thumbs up.
I don't understand it enough to have an opinion at this point. I don't know what volumetric measurement and other, it seems very subjective, the whole thing. And I think I would wait till I see something in writing and graphic, like I said.
Let me turn this around the other way and say, Planning Commission came to us for direction, not the other way around. And so I guess I would ask, do you feel like you got enough commentary here or of similar commentary to consider it input from us?
I guess it would be nice to have a better idea when we're talking about floor area of how specific the council needs us to be versus how can we potentially try to come up with ways which can define it so that it's not this unlimited unknown exactly, but that it's not so specific that we suddenly have a problem if that number doesn't quite work for some reason.
But Dylan, we've talked about this, not you and me, but in general, we've talked about the fact that it's not in stone just because it's zoning or just because it's master plan, but I think everybody is used to having a number to start with. A number, either a max number or something like that to start with, and I think that's where I am. I need to have a number because this is not an airy-fairy crowd. This is a very intense community, and I think that people are gonna wanna know, where our limits are on some of this stuff. Not to say that we wouldn't, well, I think just in general, when we're talking about master planning and zoning, the closer you can get to what you mean, the better that is.
Well, I think this piece is the one that's the big one, because, right now, we don't know the Basalt Center Circle piece, and we haven't looked enough, at least the council hasn't looked enough at Marina Park. So, looking at the CDC, if it's, potentially around an acre of land that will be developable, there's gonna be that, 0.34 that has the area between it. I think we should come up with some type of metric to say what would be, if it's gonna be, 0.75 acres of true developable piece, what is gonna be the calculation? I think we should have a calculation, because then it makes it clear to the developer. It makes it clear, it doesn't say you have to put it all in this box, like what is pointed up there. You can play with it, but I think we should say if there's a 0.75 acre box or whatever it is, you should have this FAR, and it's this amount of floors. I mean, that's my direction, is really to come up with an FAR and to come up with how many floors and, kind of define this piece so it's just clear. So when it comes to that date where we said we're gonna make it, that the CDC with their developer, if it's Lowe's, has clear direction. Because I just don't, we're gonna get the same community outpour if we don't have a number, if we just leave it out in the open. So, if the P&Z is saying, it would be really nice to look at this number, I would love to know that from the P&Z is, looking at the piece. I cannot just leave it wide open to anything and let a developer come in, because we're just gonna have the community, and then I gotta sit here through a big meeting and listen to the community, and then you're gonna petition drives and stuff. I think we just want clarity, so.
You're gonna get that anyway,
Well,
I would predict.
I don't know. I think honestly, if we get some more clarity, and then a developer has clear direction, and they show us what they can do with that, or not, then, then we can make that determination after. Leaving too much open is just not, it's just not, I just don't see it working for the larger community right now.
It's a nice segue into the next agenda item, which has to do with the negotiation with the owner of the property and an analysis of what the purchase price is gonna be based on what might be allowed on what part of the property, which is a big driver when you come to determining what it should be. We may set a number. We had 3 options that the Ellers did for us that were based on 30, 55, and 75,000 square feet on a parcel that included the polygon and the 1 point whatever it is. Then we batted around, and I think we even had a resolution that said to explore that further, and that would determine, and we kind of as a group, I think, settled on around 55,000 square feet. That's what I think I remember from that discussion. So you pick an average, and you look at it, and you split it up into a couple buildings, and you come back with a FAR that has the ledger on this side that says this is what it's gonna cost the town to buy parcel on the CDC's piece, it's gonna be whatever it is, based on whatever it's worth as a park. And so there's more to it than, you gotta weigh both those things at the same time. So at this point, I would say what I heard was you wanna move forward. Resolution, if it passes, moves us forward with a negotiation, as I read it. Could be wrong. And so you've got to dovetail, you got to work in concert with that negotiation that's going to be ongoing, right? That'll tell you what you should recommend to the community as buildable square footage, because that'll have a dollar value to it. And then we can have the conversation about whether we want to spend that kind of money or not, or more, or less. So I don't think my direction is keep going forward. I'm fine where you're at. I'm not worried about the FAR at this point. I think that's going to be an outcome at the end of the discussion. We've done scenarios, right? 3 of them. We've had dozens of submittals on what should go there, including a drop in the Elements Hotel on top of it that wasn't very, functional. So I think you guys are on the right track. And I think with some direction in this next agenda item, you'll probably be able to leave here with an idea of what you need to do.
So,
We'll do our best.
we're not gonna vote probably about this, but there's some difference in what people would like to see you do, so I say go and work with staff. That's what I say, and I think it's time we move on to the next agenda item. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dylan.
Thanks, Dylan.
Okay, Resolution 4, 2016, a resolution of the town responding to the citizen petition reviewed by the council at its January 26th, 2016 council meeting concerning purchase of the CDC property.
So I want to be as concise as possible. It says draft on here for a reason. This was the staff's first cut on responding to the petition that was submitted to the council. There are 11 sections. And I'm going to just give you a quick summary on those sections. The first is really what Dylan was talking about. That becomes important because when you get to sections 4 through 7, it's about directing an appraisal of the property that's based on what the known development could be. And that has a bearing on value. And you just need to recognize that. Number 2 is about dollars needed to finish the park. So it's about telling Post to continue to work on coming up with construction documents and putting dollars next to, let's say they have 6 phases. Phase 1 equals this, phase 2 equals this, phase 3 equals this, and actually putting dollars to it. Number 3 is about working with the CDC's developer, and the town's financial advisor. This has always been a 3-party agreement. There's never been a time from the very beginning that there wasn't a town portion, a developer portion, and a CDC portion. That's still true today. And I think it's going to be that combination that will determine sort of how the dollars get spent and allocated across the CDC parcel. If on number 1 it's X number of square feet, then the developer pays Y for that amount of square feet that they can develop, which leaves a deficit. And then how do you make up that deficit in terms of the contributions that you could get for a park? Sections 4, 5, 6, and 7 all have to do with appraising the property. It identifies that we'll carry out an appraisal. These are the parameters that we will use. We invite the CDC, if they want to carry out an appraisal and also present it to the council. We'll make the CDC aware of what we're doing in terms of an appraisal and the instructions that we're giving. Section 8 says that at the end of the day, you have an appraised value, and there's going to be different components. So if you remember Susan's map where there was 1, 2, 3, 4 different the CDC parcel is broken up into 4 different parcels. There's the park parcels at each end. There's the polygon, which we've identified as a public parcel, and then there's the development parcel. So those 4 parcels working together sort of determine where you have to spend dollars. It could be that it's the decision of the council that that would be an issue that we would take to a referendum election, just as was proposed by the petition group. Number 9 says, by the way, as you're looking at that, also look at Lions Park in terms of phasing, relocation, and upgrade plans for those buildings, with the idea that by the time you arrive at 10, you know what the park costs, you have an idea of what the appraised value is on the CDC parcels as they're described in those 4 elements, or 3 elements: park element, polygon element, development element. You have an idea of what Lion Park's going to take in order to fit into this plan. And you have a financial plan that has context. And it also starts maybe to identify other revenue sources that we can plug in, because we have months now to kind of work on it. We're not trying to do it all in 2 or 3 weeks. With the idea by the time you get to July, you have a financial plan that outlines how you're going to take care of the CDC parcel, how you're going to phase the construction of the park, how you're going to address the relocation upgrades of buildings at the Lions Park site, and whether that we look at it for parking and then that becomes an elevated park that fixes the elevation, or it's as simple as you're filling in the park over time. Realizing that we are about, hopefully, to build big holes in and we might have places for material to go. So don't miss the opportunity that might be just down the road to move material. And that's it.
Anybody?
2 things. Jen's still here, because I did forget to bring up one point as you're activating programming the park. And we just passed money for local outdoor art, and there was a public art council, and I just want them to make sure that they're involved in that discussion, because I didn't see anything about actual art on that park. So I'm glad you're still here, thanks. Mr. Scanlon, for you, I'm suggesting that we find a way to pay for the park without raising taxes. Can you do that for us?
That's one of but I have to know what all the pieces are and how much people can contribute to the various
Well,
pieces.
no, this makes sense, and if we're heading in this direction, it's, unfortunately, we have to go through a process, and it's a very logical way to get us moving forward, and it looks to me like that's what we have to do.
Gary?
So, yeah, my question is section 3, enough to direction to make it sure this is a partnership with the CDC, and trying to figure out ways to work with them, because there might be ways to finance this over time or whatever. So is that enough in there to do that, or?
Well, I think Bernie's going to finish her sentence.
Okay.
Yeah, I've studied this quite carefully. Let me just say to everyone who's here, this is probably one of the most important resolutions once we pass it, this number 4 of this year, because this gives us a game plan to finish this process that has gone for 18 months. It gives us a bunch of very concrete steps, goals, and directions to get it done by November of this year. And that's why I'm very excited about passing this resolution. My only really main concern is on section 3, is that it does not give us in writing that guarantee of a true fiscal partnership of equals, transparently sharing information back and forth to arrive at a mutually agreed and negotiated price and costs. Mike has already come up with that way of doing it, and it's called the pre-development agreement that we've used successfully in about 3 places. And the council has signed, after my hesitation, we have signed that pre-development agreement, and it calls for just that kind of financial sharing and openness, and it calls for also sharing the costs of our independent municipal financial advisor, Ehlers and Company, who did that study of the 75,000 square feet and the impact and cost to town for 3 different scenarios. So that's what simply needs to be put in here, that the CDC and the CDC developer will sign this pre-development agreement prior to us entering into these discussions.
We can't dictate that.
No, we cannot dictate that, but we can say, and this is separate from land use. Land use is his legal right, and we will process land use on a separate track. This has to do with financial negotiation. Without that pre-development agreement, I'm not willing to enter into financial negotiation, and it protects both parties. We used it with Mariner once. We gave them a lot of concessions because we knew what was going on the Element Hotel, and we gave them a lot of variances. And the second time, we just turned down the Mariner on wanting to share our sales taxes. In both cases, we had a pre-development agreement in place, and we had a detailed financial analysis that the council could use for its due diligence. And so that's why I wouldn't enter into the negotiation without that.
Rick?
Go ahead, Tom.
Oh. Tom?
This doesn't
Thought you
call
had your
for,
hand up.
this doesn't call for a negotiation, Bernie.
Okay, that's simply, we require this as a prerequisite, and then all the other activities are done in that context. I thought Mike just said that we are going to negotiate.
Well, you might end up there.
Yeah, but
This doesn't say that you're gonna do it, so, and it doesn't preclude a pre-development agreement either at the right time, and, I mean, it's your resolution, but.
Well, I would throw that out there. If you don't want it, I think it makes it simple to have it laid out as a prerequisite right in front before we go into negotiation. I can't see negotiating without that thing being in place.
I didn't really see this as a negotiation tool. But Mike?
Well, if you look at it, and if you look at section 3, you have to start trying to figure out how these parcels are gonna be paid for in time. I mean, there's a park parcel, and that's gonna need to be paid for. There's 2 park parcels, the one between RMI and the development and the one at the end. There's the polygon piece, which we've decided is a public piece. There is the development piece. Not knowing how much development goes there, you don't know how much that land can be sold for. And you then don't know what the deficit is that that's creating. And it could be that the type of development that gets proposed could actually carry more of the park. And how much of that development parcel, based on the amount that's developed, would have to contribute to park. So you're negotiating with the CDC over that development parcel and how much can be built.
Rob, then Rick.
It
Yeah.
seems like Barney's just one step ahead of us, right? We can just
Yeah,
keep
we
this
could do
moving
that
forward, and
later.
eventually we get to the pre-development discussion, right?
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Yeah.
I'm good. It's like,
Anybody else? Okay, well, I guess one of the things that sort of jumped out at me here is this whole thing is entitled Responding to the Citizen Petition reviewed by the council. And my understanding was when we left that meeting, that there was gonna be some chatting with the group that brought forward that petition, because we really didn't make any good faith effort to come back with another way to do it that would be legal. And so I guess my question is, was there work done with Kathy or that group?
No, and Susan and I talked about it today. We'd been working on it last week, and we did not include them, and we should have, as we were working on this. And that's why we put draft on it. If we need to go back and work with it some more, it's fine.
that's, Jake.
Okay, and then I just had a couple specific things about language in here. Odd one in here about, it was in the section about the appraisal, and it's section 5. It says, as the CDC has affirmed that they purchased their property based on reliance on the then current master plan, the town council agrees that the appraisal should consider the master plan then in place, which is the 2007 Basalt Master Plan. And I guess my only thought is that an appraisal is based on current market value, and I don't think an appraiser is gonna say we're gonna base this value of this land today on a master planning document from 2007.
Well, as it stands sort of right now, we have a amended downtown plan to our master plan. But without specificity as to what can be developed, you have to have a base. That was the base that was in place when they
Okay.
bought the property.
So
You
you're
didn't say
saying,
it was the concluding base, you said
Base.
it's just gonna
so,
consider it.
but what we're saying is that is the appraisal basis as of
No.
today. Yeah, Tom?
You can't dictate what the appraisal is gonna, appraiser is gonna say. It says it's a consideration.
It just seems like an
And then-
appraiser goes out
I
and
think-
evaluates the property.
And then
Raised a
remember,
good point.
it's the entire parcel. So in 2007, that would be, that entire parcel was shown to be developable. In its current configuration, it is not shown that way. If you look at our master plan.
Right. I'm just thinking, I'm an appraiser, how do I evaluate property? So that was basically it for me. Rick, did you have something?
You brought up the half-acre developable site that the petitioners petitioned for, which I think has to be discussed, you know, while you're looking at what we seem to be building some consensus around, as the Plan B. And if it reaches a level of, where the community doesn't want to accept what's on the wall here, and it reverts back to a election or a referendum or whatever in November on a half acre, then we have to know, we have to have the same facts as we do for what we're looking at. So if it's agreeable, with you guys, that would be what I would do, and say, here are two choices. One here, one there. Here are the facts, here are the financial implications, here's what we can see develop there. This is the scale, the density, the height, the things. And so you have a clear choice, and, you know, because it'll come back if we don't present it that way.
Gary?
The only thing is from what I read from the petition, it was an acre, but only a half an acre can be developed.
Correct.
Right.
So what the
Same
acre
thing.
was going to be, so, you know, it's basically, they were trying to put a zoning of 50,000, around 50,000 square feet in that 1 acre, that only a half an acre total could be moved around. It's kind of what we talked about with P and Z. So my only question is, should we, you know, just give you direction on this, and then maybe just have you go and talk, and then you can bring it to the next meeting? Would that work?
Yeah.
Because I think that would be great for us to just give you all our feedback, go
But
work with them, and then come back.
Rick,
Let me make
Rick
sure I
and then
understand what
Rob.
you just said, because
and then Bernie.
what I understood was there was going to be a half acre of that parcel that we're talking about rededicated as park, and that the building was gonna be on the half acre closest to RMI,
This
spread
isn't,
out over the acre.
Yeah.
this doesn't include specifics like that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think we just,
So
yeah,
then we're right back to where we started,
no.
right?
We heard from the
That we're
P&Z about the-
satisfying what the petitioners asked us to do, which was take 55,000 and put it on an acre.
No,
Or we're taking an acre and telling them they can do 55,000. Explain the
you're
difference.
not anywhere near a decision of that
I know,
detail.
but I'm saying, are we addressing both sides of the coin here are we taking care of the petitioner's request? Or are we doing something different with the proposal that Mike's got here? Maybe you can weigh in and
I don't know,
clarify.
I don't understand the question.
Let's hear the other
Okay.
comments, I think it'll get clearer.
Well, or maybe not, I don't know.
Yeah, well, let's circle around and then let's come back to Rick's question, because that is my major question. It says it's responding to
Right.
the petition and it's not.
No, I think that's a key question.
Yeah, so it was Rick, then Rob, then Bernie.
So my only question about the appraisal is they can't assess a value till they know the use and the square footage, right? So when does that get plugged in on our timeline?
It would help tonight, and I think Dylan asked it really politely, how many square feet? What's the FAR? on
Of the
that site?
developable part.
Yeah, what's the number?
Okay. And does that need to be part of a motion or a thumbs up or a discussion?
No, just,
You ready
what
to-
number,
You wanna open the doors right now?
what number would we put in there if we're back talking with the citizen committee?
Uh-huh.
And that on our schedule is plugged in for the next meeting. So on the schedule that's over here and in your packet, it has the next meeting. So what we're hoping to bring to you at the next meeting is a model that is showing development on the CDC property, not only this, but hopefully we can get to the point where we feel like we can fairly represent what the citizen petition was.
So we're gonna hold off on that for now.
We can.
I don't really get that, but
You're gonna arrive back at the same.
Bernie,
Well, my feeling is that we do our thing and continue our process.
Okay.
And I feel like I was elected, and this is my responsibility and our responsibility to provide leadership to the town with the input that we've gotten over 18 months. We are somehow, I think, backing into something of a consensus of the land use here, and I would continue our process, and then we present it to the public. Now, in the meantime, you should be having conversations so they can understand where we're going, and this may wait till next time, but I'm for doing our own process and then putting it to the public. There'll be a new council, the public will respond, and then the new council goes on from there.
okay. So I guess my question is, I'm not sure why we didn't reflect on this decision with the committee, because I thought that's what we were doing and that's what this says. But if it's going to be coming back to us and is going to at least acknowledge that this committee was before us and gave us a petition, which this doesn't.
Mike's gonna talk to them in the meantime.
Well, that could have happened already, Bernie.
Well,
Anyway, so that's why I'm not sure it's still going to happen, but I'm okay with this as it is, given that we are supposedly now going to talk to, the citizen committee. That's great. So if there's not, did we answer whoever's question was hanging out there?
Yeah, I'll wait.
All right. Basically, I have,
I can get the answer
let me just tell you,
later.
Rick, just let me tell you in 20 seconds, as I went back and pulled the petition. The petition said acquire 2.317 acres, which is the parcel. There was reference to fair market value. There was a reference to maintaining 1.817 as public park and 0.5 acres of the park to be developed under our normal procedures and pursuant to our normal land use regs. So it's not very limiting, but it's,
But it's a,
yeah.
With all due respect, Jackie, this wasn't drafted to be an endorsement of what was in the petition.
I
Because
understand that. But it does say it's responding to it.
responding to.
And it's not
Right.
really, responding would be to take this information that they were presenting to us and react to it in some way. So Mike is saying that that's still gonna happen, so that's fine.
okay, so,
Yeah.
one more, so what you just read, if I heard it right, was take 2.3, carve out 1.87 to turn it into a public park and have a half acre left over for development.
Yes, but if you, that's why you
I
can't
don't
read
know.
just the big piece. If you read the whole petition, it's much more broad than just making a one block
Right, absolutely.
piece. So,
Well,
you know,
that
that's,
needs
I
to
think
be-
I think overall, we're
On the
on
right
path
So
to
the,
deal with this.
so
We
you
just
could
have to
have-
work more, you know, with the CDC and the petitioners, just to make sure that we are all kind of tracking the same way, so we don't get into this scenario that you're talking about. We just go our own way and then we still get,
no, we're not going our own way, I don't think we normally do that. But if that half acre is floating around inside this 2.3 somewhere, that definitely changes the scenario as it relates to a lot of different other discussions. It really changes that whole concept right there to a completely different vision. So the things I saw were that that half acre was adjacent to RMI, what I saw. That was the concept. And if I missed the boat on that, I apologize, but I think that's what it was. What it says in there after that general specific statement, if there's stuff in there that's kind of about moving it around, then that's a pretty big piece of the puzzle.
No,
I don't think the intent is to just have it float around in the middle of 2.3 acres.
No.
The intent is to
No,
put
it's
it
on the,
where-
it's on the one side. It's
That's what I
floating on
thought.
one side. Herschel,
Then maybe I need to.
Herschel, then Bernie, okay?
The petitioners came forward with a process, and they said, this is how it has to go. It has to go on the ballot, we have to vote on it, has to be a fixed price, we're going ahead. This is responding to their petition, that seeing as how we couldn't legally do it as described in their petition, this is a process to go forward to identify the things that they were asking us to do in a very specific way in the petition. And so in this, we're describing a few things that is a legal process. There's a negotiation with the seller, there's an appraisal, it does have to go to the voters for the amount that is eventually identified, which must include improving the park and maintaining the park. And so this is a response saying, this is a way we could go forward to address the things. And if it needs to go back and not be voted on tonight, because this is a draft, and if it would make everybody more comfortable, if there was more discussion with the petitioners about why this is a viable way to approach the goals that they described in their petition, great, let's table, and we can attack this when it's a little more specific than the draft.
Yeah, I would second that.
Okay, okay, so, we're gonna, do we need a motion to table?
Move to table.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Do we discuss or not?
Yeah, we can discuss.
So we're kicking the can down the road,
That's
just a
what
little
I
bit
say.
further ahead,
I
right?
agree.
But we're still moving forward.
Yeah, we're gonna pass this.
It's just voted, right?
Yeah, so that's why
Okay,
I said
Rick?
I'm ready to vote.
I don't see any risk in giving direction by motion to Mike to go forward with this, with the understanding that he's including a conversation with the group that petitioned to
I
do
agree.
something different.
Is
There's no
that
reason
different
to
than a
table
motion
it,
to
there's no,
table?
No,
yeah.
Yes.
It's a motion to
Yeah.
approve it and go forward and deal with it like we normally would.
To approve this on a first reading, is that
It's
what you're
not a
saying?
first reading, it's
Just
a
a
one-time, it's a resolution.
Resolution, so then it's as
Direction.
written.
It's a work
You
order.
can word it any way
Okay,
you want.
let me just ask a question. If
I don't
we've
know, what do you
tabled
have
this,
to
can
do?
we still make a motion on it?
Pardon me?
If we've already tabled it, can we make a motion?
Did you vote to table it?
No,
No, I guess we didn't. Oh, okay, we didn't vote.
which is the better way to go? as
Withdraw
far
the
as
motion if you want to vote on up or down on this. You can
Do you
withdraw
want-
the motion to table.
Do you want to withdraw your motion, Herschel?
The
I'd like
mover,
to know which is easier for the staff to go forward, because we want to go forward.
Give them formal direction.
What's easier?
Pass the
This.
motion. Pass it, and in section 11, where it says the town council will continue to provide opportunities for the public to provide input, just add a phrase, and the town manager will work with the petition committee as he works on this resolution to identify those places where we might have missed, and I can come back and have a resolution that amends this.
Can somebody say so moved?
With the,
Yeah, if it's okay with the second, I would withdraw my motion to table, and I would move to approve resolution, whatever it is, 04, series of 2016.
Second,
Okay.
Is that wrong?
do you want to make
as
the
amended.
amended?
as amended.
Yes.
Yeah.
He didn't say it.
As it will
Accordance
be
with
amended?
Mike's amendment.
As amended.
As amended, thank you. As amended.
And
Yes.
just
Yes.
quick procedural question, we can pass a resolution that's a draft,
Yes,
Yeah.
and we just amend it.
it's always a draft. Basically, everything you get is a draft. It can be
True.
changed.
True, okay. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thanks, guys. We have a break on our schedule right now. Do we want to take it or not take it?
Yeah.
Go. Five,
I
please,
think we
five.
earned it.
Older guys take a break.
is no consent agenda. How about council comments, reports, disclosures? Yes, Jerry?
I got, this was a good one. I went to the Colorado Bicycle Summit in Denver on Monday, and Governor Hickenlooper spoke, but also the bike czar for the state, Ken Garth spoke, the director of CDOT spoke, and this really impressive planner from Copenhagen spoke at this conference, and I'm gonna try to get you guys some of the information from there, because Governor Hickenlooper is absolutely committed to making biking it's already a $1 billion industry from 2010. It's probably, they're doing a new study this year, so it's gotta be at least 4 times that now. Almost 10% of the entire biking industry, or the amount of money that's made through biking, is in Colorado. And so it was really just impressive to see how much biking really means to the state. And the director of CDOT was awesome. He's new, and he said CDOT's gonna change. It might be glacial change, but there's going to be change. And things like our underpass, things like Two Rivers Road, and things like that will be looked at as a bicycle facility for transportation and not just cars. And, he had a great story that, the new 36, if anyone's been in Denver, they redid all of 36, and they put a huge bike path on the side of 36. And so the director just got here, he cut a ribbon, had nothing to do with it. He's like, I'm gonna ride all the way back to my house in Stapleton. And they sent 2 engineers to ride with him. He rode down the path, and all of a sudden, the path ended. And the engineers were like, well, we're gonna turn around now. He's like, no, I said I was going home. And so he's like, I'm gonna find my way. And of course, he's like, I'm not calling my wife, and you're not calling my wife. And he ended up getting on Federal Boulevard and almost dying. And he started realizing, wow, there's huge gaps in our system. And if the CDOT director sees huge gaps in the transportation issue, that was really impressive. And then this last guy who spoke is a major planner for the city of Copenhagen. They have been on a 30-year quest to change Copenhagen into just a bike city. And now there are certain intersections in Copenhagen that have 40,000 bikes go through it a day. And 75% of those people ride it in the winter. He showed it in snowstorms and everything. People look at their bikes as like vacuum cleaners. I mean, it's just a tool that they use. It's not like I'm going biking today, I'm using it. And so, and Governor Hickenlooper was great, and the mayor of Denver is great. They are changing the way we think about it, and I really want to bring that back to Basalt, because we need to think bigger than the car and really think about bikes, and we have great connections now. We need to make them better.
Excellent. Excellent. Just to follow up with what Gary said, that gentleman, the new director of CDOT, was at the Transportation Symposium that was just in Glenwood, and his name is Shailen Bhatt, and he is like from a different world of transportation. He is not a car guy at all. He's a multimodal. Do you know Shailen Bhatt? Were you there? Okay. Anyway, he is awesome. But since I'm talking, I'll go ahead with my other comment, which is we met with, it was Mike and myself and some citizens who have been watching what's been happening in Eagle County and watching how the approval process happens and the whole process in general. And so several of us went over and talked to the Eagle County commissioners about the concept of caucuses, like neighborhood caucuses like Picken County has, and basically bringing the decisions of the community down to the neighborhood level. I think the people in this room are very familiar with how Picken County caucuses work, in that before there are roads paved, before master plan documents are adopted, before development applications are reviewed or approved, they go to the local level caucus. And what was the most wonderful thing is that all 3 of these commissioners were completely open to this. They totally get that if X neighborhood wants a ton of growth, they should be able to have a ton of growth. And if this neighborhood doesn't, they should be able to nix it. So Maybe Mike has a little bit more to say about it, but it seemed to me that they did give it back to us. They gave it back to Ken Ransford, who's the attorney who drafted the original documents. But we are gonna see them again, and I have a feeling that I wouldn't say this would be fast-tracked, but there's nothing to keep Eagle County from adopting this concept. There's nothing to keep the town of Basalt from adopting this concept, so that you kind of take the burden off of the elected officials and put it on the people who are going to be directly impacted by decisions of elected officials.
I think the thing that I like in terms of what I heard was an understanding that there was a cultural difference between the way Vale, Avon, Edwards, Gypsum have been planned in Eagle, and the use of metropolitan districts on that side as opposed to this side, which has been rural, agricultural, more reflective of preserving the natural environment, and understanding that you had to figure out how to accommodate it, and this might be a way you can accommodate the differences in development cultures. And just hearing him say it just like that, we have to recognize there's differences.
Anyway, it was great. So, wonderful things are happening because people are starting to care a lot. Anyone else?
Just real quick, we were looking forward to a draft resolution from, I think it was Patty Clapper that volunteered to provide a draft resolution reflecting a partnership between the Community Foundation and the Early Childhood Group in the Mid-Valley and the Business Roundtable. So the schedule to see that was around now, maybe by the end of February, so I don't know. I'll check in. We have a meeting on February 20th with the whole crew in 3rd Street Center, and we would hope to have some indication there about their support. So.
And Eagle passed it, and I believe Pitkin had concerns about some of the language that was in the Eagle resolution.
Yeah.
And they were making modifications to it, and we'll probably latch on to whatever Pitkin's final resolution is. Have they voted on it yet?
No, they haven't. I mean, to give you an update, Eagle County passed it and used cradle to career, Aspen to parachute, and Pickens County was a little like, wait, at that meeting, we were really talking about Mid-Valley, and maybe then we'll get, maybe to Glenwood or something, but if we're, really truly the resolution for us should be more about focusing on the needs in this 3-mile planning area and stuff like that. So, and Pickens was more, a little worried about going all the way to parachute too. So, but it's coming.
Excellent.
So we'll be able to comment on that when we see it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just saying where Pickens was having an issue. I didn't say it.
That's fine.
Others? Okay. Citizen comments for items not on the agenda and items added to the agenda after the deadline. Yes, sir.
Good evening. I think the first thing that I wanted to say to you all was stimulated by Robin just now. Do you all know how hard it is for someone like myself to get in front of you and complain constantly about politics and the way things are done? Get the reaction that I do, be chastised, have things said about me, have people in power go to your wife's employment and have them fired because of their power. I'm standing before you right now. I wrote you all last week, and I asked you to help me make a motion to discuss fiduciary responsibility and transparency, what a council should be doing with their community. I've been pulling open records for close to 2 years. I've caught the mayor doing completely inappropriate things for 2 years. I've had no support from the council or from legal counsel, town manager, administration, or the community. Recently, things have been going on that point us in the direction of wanting more transparency. Bernie brings up the fact that he wants to go into a transparent partnership with openness. A transparent partnership with openness. Okay. I wrote Mike Scanlon on January 27th. Mike, please find attached yet another violation of the Open Meetings Act by Mayor Whitsitt. I believe town's legal counsel, Tom Smith, has recently written an opinion on this matter. May I see that opinion? Please read this and help me to understand why the mayor finds breaking the law and violating the community's legal right to hear debate in public is appropriate. I have no faith in you at all, none. Power and influence of the office. I'm going to read this. This was sent from Jackie Whitsitt to Tom Smith, carboning Rob Levitt, Bernie Grauer, Rick Stevens, Mark Kittle, Gary Tenenbaum, Herschel Ross, Mike Scanlon, Judy Tippett, Susan Philp, Pam Schelling. Tom, please present something to council that would be legal and could be presented to the voters. There are a number of council members who believe that a ballot question may be appropriate based on the community sentiment expressed by the petition. The legal info we are receiving could look one-sided to the 400 people who signed this petition. It is difficult to understand why are we taking a no alternative stand. We need to show that we are listening to the community on this issue. Thank you for your hard work, Jackie. And then there's a long dissertation from legal counsel that's basically saying what he said in the meeting. I do have Tom Smith's letter to the Basalt Council dated October 29, 2015, signed by Mr. Tom Smith. I'm only going to read the first paragraph. If you want me to read the whole thing, I will.
First paragraph be fine, thank you, David.
Thank you, Doctor. Rick has asked me if emails exchanged among members of the town council constitute meetings subject to the Colorado Open Meetings Law, CRS.34-6-401 and 402, in quotes, OML, Open Meetings Law. The OML requires advance public notice of all meetings, 3 or more members, which would mean for all practical purposes that such email exchanges should not occur. I'm having a hard time with the mayor voting against her oath of office, her fiduciary responsibility, her legal responsibility to the community. I'm having a much bigger problem with her weighing in, communicating with the board openly, with her administrative staff, on issues that have to do with the Willets, the tree farm, Eagle County. You got to rein her in, guys. I'd like to see you make a motion tonight to put this on the agenda, whether it's tonight or at another time, and let the community weigh in on how they feel about transparency. I agree with Bernie. Bernie, transparency with a partnership. I don't know that anybody trusts this council enough to go into a partnership with them. If I were Michael McVoy, I would tell you all to pound sand. I'm incensed. I really am. I'd like to see you as a council do something about what's going on here. Thank you.
Anybody else? Yeah, Robin. You finished?
I'd like to see the council speak. I'd like to have some comments from the council.
Sorry, David, that's not what we do on comments not on the agenda.
I've watched you do it so many times with Kathy Click and your little special group. I want to see the council say something.
We're not going to weigh in, and it's Robin's turn. Thank you. Robin? Can you speak from there? Because apparently you were not going to.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So you all are okay with the illegal way that she's running
Public
this
comment,
committee?
David, it's not an opportunity for debate or a motion from council. It's public comment, and you've given your public comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. I appreciate it.
How are you, Robin?
Well, how are you all?
Great.
Excellent for the feedback. So I actually was gonna ask you feedback also, but we can discuss after. We have the election forum scheduled. The chamber is hosting. We're gathering questions. And the dates that we have determined are March 10th, and we're looking at 2 dates. So March 10th from 5:30 to 7:30. And we're looking at a Saturday from 2 to 5 with a follow-up social gathering that
Is
we'll
that
discuss.
March 10th, Saturday?
Saturday's March 12th.
Okay.
And only just as I'm looking around now, a decision we made to have everything in the town hall is shaking a little bit in my head, and that's where I wanted the feedback, so I'll tell you the criteria under which we made decisions. First of all, the middle school wasn't available. Most of the spaces are around 80 seats. We decided the optimal situation was to have grassroots broadcast as broadly as possible, and to really create a community event. So we were going to get the restaurants and various places to show the forum. Then I just spoke to the middle school today, the high school, and they do have a space with 400. What would happen, there's a big cost involved with grassroots, so we're looking at as much as $3,000 for the chamber, for the videotaping offsite, and it only streams offsite, it doesn't broadcast. But there is a choice if people like a larger space, and I'm getting some kind of pushback that we don't want to be too crowded here. So the alternative, as I see it, is to be in the high school, but no video at all. So we wouldn't have that broadcast. We would just have a space for 400 people, but we wouldn't have the 850, the various costs. We love the idea of working with grassroots, but it's really here or there. And so because you all know and everyone here has an interest, we don't want to make this decision without a consensus of opinion. So I don't know if that's a topic, given everyone's involved, that you could provide feedback?
I
or
say
should
you decide, and we can give you feedback outside of this meeting. How's that?
Yeah.
So as to be consistent.
Call me by tomorrow morning or email, or I can wait. I'll wait and we can discuss.
And you might want to check with the candidates and find out if any other than me are going to be out of town that time.
Well, I'm just assuming that if people are running for, only because of time, it's a really good suggestion, that if people are running for office, they're going to use that as a critical time and be available. It's going to be very hard. I'm so sorry, but just getting people's schedules and this has been really a lot of detail, and I'm afraid to start changing around. I don't know how to do it, to tell you the truth.
I would just suggest that you work with town staff, and if you want, if you want input from individual counselors, but I don't really want to engage in an item right now.
I understand that, especially for consistency. Well, I will wait afterwards if anyone wants to share some thoughts, and then I'll take it sort of 3 to 4 or whatever.
I would recommend that you talk to staff more, actually, because.
I have talked extensively to staff, yeah.
Right.
I have.
Diligent on.
We have been working
Okay.
like crazy, moving people around and getting the space. So it's really just a matter of we'll move this around. If people feel that this space is of value and we can make it comfortable for everybody, then we'll stay here. Otherwise, 400 seats in the school.
Sharon, do you want to come up?
Thank you so much.
I suppose I could just talk to Robin too, but, I had actually called the high school about this today too, and they said that they do have a space. Up to 1,200 is what they can seat. Not that we'll get that many voters there. But I also called Colorado Audiovisual to see if they would give you a price, because they can do the streaming, live streaming in HDL. And I just really did not want to, I don't think that we should have it here.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Okay. Resolution 5, a resolution of the town authorizing the town clerk to appoint judges of election for the regular municipal election to be held Tuesday, April 5th. Pam.
This is basically a housekeeping matter. It's, state law requires that if council so desires, they can allow the town clerk to appoint election judges. And I'm requesting that
happen.
By resolution.
I make a motion to adopt the resolution.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Thanks, Pam. Okay, Resolution 6, the Town of Basalt authorizing borrowing on a line of credit for the purpose of purchasing affordable housing for the Town of Basalt. Judy?
This is more of a housekeeping item. This is our line of credit. As you know, we can only do it a year at a time, and so that year has passed, and we just need to renew our current line of credit.
Yeah, Tom.
Just a reminder, you did approve this mid-year this past year,
Correct.
and because of limitations on multi-year debt, it has to come back up every year. So this is consistent with past action.
Gary?
Well, no, the question I had was, the line of credit, is it, what do we have left in that line of credit?
We have advanced 1.2, and we are going to, we continue to make the, anything we collect from the affordable housing grant, and I estimate that's around 230, 240. We'll go back on that.
Is your 17 units cash flow positive?
I move approval of resolution number 6, series of 2016.
Second.
Further discussion?
Yes, please. When a vacancy occurs, how is it filled? And how are we redefining essential workforce? Are we still on that path to include other people that are in the workforce other than police, firemen, teachers, those kind?
Police officer taking that unit. We have a whole food worker, we have teachers, and it's, we put it out there and if we get responses, show the unit. And if they work, live and work there, that's. kind of
Okay,
what-
so it's advertised on the website?
Susan has a great, email that we send out to workers, to employers in the thing, and it also goes to the school district and to Pitkin. And
Okay.
so we don't have very much turnover with the unit that we did just kind of come up with to our police office.
Anybody else?
I'd love to learn about that stuff as a matter of course.
I'm sorry,
I'd love to learn about things like that as a matter of protocol, not just because Rick asked a question.
Well, that's why I asked the question, so I
Right.
could learn.
Because I just know that we just got a cop housing in Basalt. I'm thrilled.
For on-call purposes, it is perfect, so.
Okay. There's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thanks. Resolution 7, finding the petition for annexation for the property known as the Stotts Mill annexation in substantial compliance with the requirements of the Municipal Annexation Act and setting the date of the annexation eligibility hearing. James?
Second. Mark, if you want to come up here. This is a resolution that would approve of substantial compliance of the Stotts Mill annexation petition and annexation map with the Colorado Municipal Annexation Act. As background, the Stotts Mill property is 18 acres. It is just to the north of Basalt High School and the Rio Grande Trail on the east side of South Drive. The property is in the urban growth boundary and currently in Pickens County. It had development approvals for 110 units in 2009. The applicant is in the process of submitting a new application because the development approvals lapsed. And the proposal is to reinstate the prior approvals for the single-family portion of the development, which is the small lot component. And they're also proposing to do a new sketch plan development review on the multifamily portion. They're proposing a total of 156 units. The application requires a annexation. This annexation substantial compliance hearing is the first step in the annexation process that's mandated by the state. It simply identifies that the petition and the draft annexation map are consistent with the State Municipal Act requirements.
It's not a substantive review of the development application at this point. It's the town's policy that we don't annex property until a development review has been concluded. The pre-development agreement that we do have with the applicant indicates that we'll consider stuff such as affordable housing, the traffic, daycare provisions, and many other items through the development review process. The approval of this resolution wouldn't obligate the town to annex the property ultimately, and it sets an eligibility hearing for annexation and kind of kicks off the noticing requirements that are in the Municipal Annexation Act. Staff, in evaluating the petition and the annexation map, believes that it's consistent with the Annexation Act. And this evening, we would recommend that you take applicant comments. We do have Mark Chain here representing the applicant, and then provide council discussion. As we indicated, we believe it meets the requirements, and so we would recommend approval of the resolution. Mark, do you have additional comments at this point?
No, I have no comments. I'm here if you have any questions. I'm sitting in for Briston Peterson. He's the PE of MSP1, and he is away right now. And you've had a lot of other discussion tonight, so I think we can be easy this evening.
Did you have to do a petition prior to this for the neighbors, or
No.
is there any opposition to this annexation?
Not at this point. Basically what happens from this point is if you approve the resolution tonight, we set an annexation eligibility hearing, which is not less than 30 days and not more than 60 days after tonight. And there has to be a noticing to Pickens County and to all the special districts that this property is located in, so that we can get comments, or they can provide comments prior to the annexation eligibility hearing. And then there's a whole development review process that's after that has the public noticing requirements for neighbors.
Okay. Yeah.
I move approval of resolution number 7, series of 2016, which is only finding the petition for annexation for the property known as Stouts Mill in substantial compliance with the requirements.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
8D, Resolution 8, resolution of the town related to a restated town manager's agreement.
Mayor, I move that the town council approve resolution number 8, series of 2016.
Second?
Can I make one comment, Jackie?
Yes.
Just sort of in case that it's not clear. You've got a red line version, and the reason there are so many red lines in it is that I took Mike's contract originally was in 2012. Before this year, there were 2 sets of revisions, and rather than have an original contract and several addenda, I consolidated all the changes into one contract, so that now this should be an up-to-date contract that has all changes in prior years, so that you only have to look in one place for the contract.
It
That was
appeared to
needed.
be, to me.
I have a couple of quick questions on, well, it's page 3. It's an item C. It's just a clarification. It says employee may at his option and upon written notification to the mayor declare this agreement terminated. A, in the event the town is in breach of this agreement, or if employee's performance or continued employment is discussed at a public meeting. Do we want that there? Is that something we just got through doing, is discussing performance in a public meeting?
I'm sorry, where
It's
is
on
it?
page 3, it's the C, it's like C. It is 1C, maybe?
So you're asking for more clarification there, because if we just discuss his performance, you could
I mean,
terminate this?
we just, we,
3C,
3C, thank you.
I'm sorry, I'm not finding it.
Well, it's on page 3.
under termination, 3C.
The town shall not pay severance pay for termination of this agreement. The exceptions?
No,
No, it's employee may at his option and upon written notification to the mayor declare this agreement terminated and be entitled to severance pay outlined in subsection A in the event the town is in a breach of this agreement, or if employee's performance or continued employment is discussed in the public meeting. So, it's,
I didn't even pay any attention to that. That's a holdover from the original agreement. We didn't discuss it the last time.
Right.
So I guess the question is,
The last clause frankly doesn't make much sense.
because you want
because-
that discussed in the.
Well, that's why I was gonna say, this year, Mike asked for it.
Right.
Breach of the agreement, fine, but,
We
I
just
get,
strike that last piece?
just a second,
You
Gary.
okay?
Let's just ask Mike, do you want that in there or not in there? If employee's performance or continued employment is discussed in a public meeting?
I'll think about it, but I would just leave it there. It was my original agreement,
Okay,
and I've had it for 14 years. I
okay,
have
well,
yet to exercise
it jumped out at me because we just got through discussing.
I've yet to exercise
frankly,
it.
I know, but it was just, you asked for it in a public
Right.
meeting, and
Right,
then you could invoke this.
yeah, but,
Yeah, I know you wouldn't, but it's, I don't know.
well, I'm sure if I had representatives, they would say, well, you just violated your own agreement.
Okay. I just,
Yeah.
yeah, just,
can I make a suggestion?
Yeah,
That, Mike, in fairness, discussion of public meeting, unless, it should at least say unless requested by the employee,
Yeah.
okay?
please. And then my only other, just clarification is under 9, transportation, that is personal transportation allowance because business transportation is covered elsewhere. Yes, sir.
Under performance evaluation at his request within 60 days. All it says is at his request, and we've had difficulty scheduling that in the past.
That's the 360 review.
Yeah, that's
Sorry.
different.
I know.
Where's that at?
Performance, number 6, performance evaluation.
The ICMA piece?
Yeah.
Oh. And where would you put the 60 days?
At his request and within 60 days, or 30 days, or however long it takes to.
60 days is fine.
Tom?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we're locked into a deadline here.
That was a problem.
Yeah, if we want to self-impose one by, agreeing to one, I think that's fine. You can always agree to extend it.
Yep.
if you're okay with that.
Yep.
Okay. Anybody else have anything? Or is there a motion?
There is a motion
There is a
and a second
motion
on the floor.
Are we done? Oh, did you have something to, Rob? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Got it. Okay, let's see. Are we to?
The 9s.
Oh, ordinance 7, an ordinance of the town granting a franchise by the town of Basalt to Rocky Mountain Natural Gas, Colorado LLC, with its principal place of business at 600. Should we open both these? Are these
Three of them.
two the same?
There's 3 of them.
3 of them.
Same entity, but they're technically 3 different.
Locations.
Should we do them separately, or?
Yeah, do it separately.
Okay, let's do the first one.
Motion to approve ordinance 7.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And 9B is ordinance 8, and an ordinance of the town granting a franchise by the town of Basalt to Rocky Mountain Natural Gas LLC with its principal place of business at 600 12th Street, Suite 300 Golden.
Move approval of ordinance number 8, series of 2016.
And you set the second reading.
Oh, I'm sorry, and setting the second reading for,
February 23rd.
it's on the second page, on February 23rd.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
And 9C, first reading of ordinance 9, an ordinance of the town granting a franchise by the town of Basalt to Rocky Mountain Natural Gas LLC with its principal place of business at 600 12th Street, Suite 300 Golden.
Motion to approve.
Second.
And set the second reading.
And set the second reading.
And let's set the second reading for February 23rd.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thanks. And do we actually have an executive session? Motion to go into executive
Short
session
one.
for CRS 246402-4B.
I move
And
we go
E.
into executive session.
For B and D, you gotta do both. KRS 24-6402 for B and E.
I do that.
Okay.
We're in. All in favor?
Aye.
I'm sorry, who seconded that? Gary, did you
Zach, so
second
yeah.
that?
Gary, did you
We wanna be
move that
clear.
or second that?
Did you second that one? Okay.
Yeah, you have to be specific.
Are you off?
Hold on.